You're listening to the Adventurous Reinvention podcast. I'm Allison Boyle, aka She Dreams of Alpine, and this is the show that's dedicated to all the adventurous spirits out there who have either been transformed by the outdoors or are interested in what it looks like to step into a new, adventurous, and courageous kind of identity in their life. It doesn't matter what your background is in the outdoors, what age you're starting at, or where you grew up. If you're curious about the outdoors and using adventure as a way to reinvent yourself, you're in the right place. I'll be sharing all kinds of personal adventure stories, lessons I've learned from the mountains, teaching what I know about the outdoors and leadership, and interviewing some amazing adventurous women all along the way. I've been coaching women on becoming safe, confident, and self-sufficient backpackers and leaders of their own adventurous lives since 2018, and I know exactly what big fears and self-doubts can pop up along the way. I have so much to share with you, so let's dive in. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Adventurous Reinvention podcast. Today, I am here with Kellie. We're going to be talking about something we get asked about constantly inside of our Backpacking Badass program, also even in my DMs at events, everywhere. So this is about hiking and backpacking with your dog and really kind of uncovering that, is your pup actually ready? How can you start to look at if your pup, how to get them ready, how to get them prepared if this is something you want to do with your pup. And so we finally decided to give this a permanent home on the podcast so we could point people who ask us this question to this episode, and it just becomes this sort of living educational resource that you've always got a place to come back to when you need it. And like I mentioned at the beginning, I have Kellie on my team with me today to join in on this topic because we both have experience with hiking and backpacking with dogs. Kellie is one of our coaches inside of the Backpacking Badass program and a core part of the She Dreams of Alpine team. She's been on here before, but if you're brand new to this podcast and maybe you're hearing her for the first time, I'm going to have her quickly introduce herself. Kellie, go ahead.
Hello, badasses. It's me again. I love popping up on the podcast, so I love when Allison invites me for these team episodes. So, like she mentioned, I'm one of the coaches and I do a lot of the social media management and client success coordinator. So, of course, as a small team, Allison and I both wear a lot of hats in the business. And so
Yes.
we are constantly getting feedback and personal stories from clients, which I think is the most fun part of all the jobs we do. So I actually worked at a dog daycare and a boarding facility, like one of the biggest ones in my town, all through college. So I know a ton about dogs and their body language and all kinds of stuff and all about the breeds. And I also have a degree in biology and I studied a lot of animal behavior with a focus on conservation ecology. So I, in short, was animal obsessed as a kid. Still am animal obsessed as an adult.
Didn't you work part-time at a vet as well for a while?
Oh yeah, I did do that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
did. They had asked me to work full time, but it was right up the street from my house, and I had just started She Dreams of
Yeah.
Alpine and left my city parks job. And he wanted me to work full time, and I was like, no, but you can hire my sister. And then I was like, well, you know what? I'll help out once a week. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I do have a tiny bit of vet medicine in my background too.
Awesome. Now, as I mentioned, Kellie and I have both hiked and backpacked with our dogs. So I thought also before we get into kind of the top questions that we get, we'll give you a little bit of background on that so you kind of know where we're coming from when we talk about hiking and backpacking. And always, we don't have the end all be all information on this topic. We're not claiming to be the ultimate experts on hiking and backpacking with your dogs, but we've done it before. And so we just wanted to share our experience. So for me, I actually I've had two dogs since, living on my own. And one of them, they both are Italian Greyhounds. And if you know what an Italian Greyhound is, they are small dogs. So both of my dogs have been around 12 to 15 pounds. My first dog, Lincoln, he lived to about 15 years old. And then we have a puppy right now, Oliver, and he's about a year and a half. And yeah, he's a small dog as well. But my last Italian Greyhound, we hiked and backpacked tons. He loved it. He was an adventure pup. We went on many adventures together. He loved it. I now have a new puppy, as I mentioned, because my other puppy passed away a couple of years ago, and we got Oliver last year. And so he's kind of he's like in training. So that was a new experience for me because when I started hiking and backpacking with Lincoln, he was like a bit older when we started. And then Oliver has been really young, and I'm very much in this lifestyle already. And so I have been having to learn how to train him into this because you can't just like immediately start taking your puppy on long adventures. And also there's a lot of like building courage and confidence and like ability to handle the miles over time. And so we have been doing a lot of slow training. And I think this year he's going to be ready for his very first backpacking trip. So I have been preparing him for that. But he's been going on a lot of training hikes with me now, around 6 to 8 miles at this point. What about you,
Yeah,
Kelly?
I'm a big dog girly. Like the bigger the head, the more I want the dog. I love a big chunky head. So I used to have two dogs. One of them passed away a couple years ago, and he was a deaf Great Dane mix. And then my current one is a bulldog mix, and she was extremely reactive when I first got her. So it took a lot of training. And actually, I had a one-on-one call with one of our clients in the Adventurous Reinvention experience, and she's a dog trainer that's really struggling because she has a really reactive dog that she wasn't expecting, and it's giving her a little like imposter syndrome. And I remember telling her like, "Oh my gosh, my reactive dog made walks and hikes so much harder. Like they stopped being fun for a little bit." So I have a lot of experience with special need dogs,
Yeah.
and I always get rescues. And so those come with working through past trauma. I think the youngest I got Zion, he was like 6 months old. And so typically you're not getting a puppy at the shelter. It's usually like a dog that's at least a few months. So they may not be as impressionable as when you get puppies.
Mhm.
So it's
That's so true. Yeah.
yeah, so when you have like rescue dogs or you're starting with dogs that are older, even if you had them when they were puppies, like
They take a whole new approach, a different approach.
exactly,
Yeah.
yes. And then I have hiked a lot with my dogs and then backpacked with them when it was appropriate and safe to bring dogs, which we'll get into all that in the episode on like considerations. But as my dog got older, Maple is the dog I have now. She can't go on 6 or 7
Yeah.
mile hikes with me anymore. And and her breed gets really, they're very heat intolerant because her face is so little. So that's another thing that, we'll talk about later is safety considerations and what plays into that. So
Yeah.
I
Absolutely. Yeah.
definitely was not the one to train my dogs though. Like Zion, when I had just had him and he was 6 months old, I was like, I'm gonna take him backpacking. And I took him to the Red River Gorge. And we were like hiking in at night on like a Friday night to get in there. And so like he had no experience. I totally just tossed that puppy who had been in a hoarding case before, so not a hiking dog. I just totally tossed him into the deep end. And luckily, he loved it. And there was like another dog that was like a trail dog that could really be a good influence on him. But yeah, he tried to like flip the tent the first night because he didn't know what we were sleeping in and he had anxiety about that stuff coming from a
Yeah.
hoarding case. So
I mean, I think a lot of like Kelly and I's experience sometimes does come having from learn the hard way. So hopefully, like, you can learn from us too and
yes.
like, yeah, approach that. And hopefully, we'll talk. I think I have a question written down about like kind of giving our thoughts on reactive dogs because actually Lincoln was leash aggressive with towards other dogs. Like off leash, he would be fine, but when he was on a leash, he was aggressive too. So that was interesting to navigate with him as well. But I'm sure we'll kind of touch more on those topics as we kind of go through them.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's great. Okay, so here's how today is going to go down in this episode. We're going to do our best. Kelly and I are talkers. We're going to do our best to keep this an hour, an hour 20 maybe. There's so many questions we pulled for. I had to even pare this down, and still I was like, oh, I just want to like touch all these questions. So we're going to do our best not to over chat on each one, but some we probably might go more on than others. And we pulled our most asked questions. We've been hosting the Backpacking Badass program since 2019, so it's over 6 years now. And we commonly get questions about hiking and backpacking with dogs. And so I went back and looked at we kind of keep a master document of our questions. So I pulled some of our top questions from the community, and we're just going to riff. Like, we don't have really a script for this. We do have some guiding notes and like questions we want to do it, but this is kind of coach mode, a little bit more off the cuff advice that you'd get from us if you were in one of our programs or talking to us on the trail. So, also, please, again, take this as our personal advice on the topic, not the end all be all advice on the topic. So, I always recommend do your own research, tailor it to your very own dog. Every dog is unique and specific and has its own background and challenges. So you kind of have to build from there, but you can kind of take our advice and do some more research and yeah, grow with your pet as you get more into hiking and backpacking. Okay. So let's get into it. I'm going to kick us off. And kind of, we broke this up into like core segments. So the first segment is like addressing this, like, is my dog even ready for this question? And so one of the questions I wrote down is, how do you actually know if your dog is cut out for this? Is it a breed thing? Is it a personality thing? Is it both? And I think I'm going to kick us off, Kellie, and say my thoughts on this, and then I'll let you chime in. So one thing that I say all the time in all different scenarios, but it applies to hiking and backpacking with your dog. And that is go slow to go fast, meaning that I think any dog could be cut out for hiking and backpacking, could, but it always depends on the dog. So my advice with anybody is you want to start off slowly with your dog on short day hikes, on low stake environments trips, like car camping trips, stuff like that. Build skills and trail time from there as you both grow, because you will get to know if your dog is into this or not, and you can scale it from there and you can see what you need to work on. So that's like my first thought. Kellie, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, when we have our clients, all kinds of clients, whether it's the Adventurous Reinvention Experience or the Backpacking Badass, we're teaching them how to do training plans for themselves to get them understanding how they feel on certain mileage with certain elevation gain. And we recommend doing the same thing with your pet. Like if you're doing a training plan for yourself, do those training hikes with your pet, because there's a lot of things that people don't consider. And I won't unpack them yet because I know I'm going to unpack them later. But there's a lot. You have to like lead your dog, it's not just throwing them into things. So going on those training hikes, taking them camping at a car campground, letting them check out the tent in the house before you even go. Because, like I said, like my dog, when I threw my big deaf dog into backpacking because I was naive about it and was like, well, he's a big dog, he can handle it. And he could handle the mileage. But what freaked him out was being in a tent because he came from a hoarding case. And so that was
Yeah.
really scary for him. So I had to learn with him. He never liked the tent no matter how much we went out. He never enjoyed being in the tent. He did not like sharing the space with me and the other dog, while the other dog's like crawling in my sleeping bag. And so I had to learn to adjust around that. And so with personalities, with breeds, with age of your dog, like the more you take your dog out and just have those experiences together, you're going to be learning a lot about the both of you and your
Yeah.
capabilities, what the comfort levels are. And those are things to research too, right? Like I had to get help with my reactive dog from a trainer to understand that a lot of that was coming from her breed. She's like a 70-pound dog that wants to chase livestock. She wants
Yeah.
to run at bulls.
Yeah, and
So,
there totally are different breed personality things.
yes. Or
Like I have a
my,
sight hound and I will never trust Oliver off leash. And we're going to talk about off leash stuff. He's a sight hound And literally on our day hikes, he'll be the bestest boy and he'll see a squirrel and just start sprinting.
Yes,
Like,
and you'll learn your pet's triggers too,
yeah.
like it can be scary to have a reactive dog, but when you learn what sets them off, you
Mhm.
learn like the trails you can go to or like how to handle that reactivity. And so um yeah, we're gonna get into all those things too.
But I think like kind of like just echoing off what Kelly said, the go slow to go fast really just if you really go slow, you can see if your breed is cut out for it, but be open to the idea that maybe your dog might not like this. And you shouldn't force them into it, or you should be willing to go very slow to get them comfortable with it. Like Kelly was mentioning, like being scared of tents. I haven't even introduced Oliver to a tent, but I was just thinking when you said that, I might set up my tent in my house for a while and just have it be something he goes in and out and finds treats so that like before we ever go out onto the trail, it's something he's comfortable with and isn't like, what the heck is this? Like
Yeah.
he's already familiar. So
Yeah,
yeah.
and dogs are not wildlife. Like I want they're not wildlife. They don't understand nature. Like it might be exciting for them to run all around so that you can say that like, oh, they love being outside, but they don't really understand being outside. They don't understand elements, they don't understand wildlife, they don't understand noxious plants, they don't understand mileage. So a lot of people are like, "Oh, they're gonna love it because dogs love being outside," but not every dog loves it actually.
Not every dog loves it. I mean, I think a lot of dogs do, and it can be a great experience. But yeah, you got to be open to it. So let's talk about what age is maybe too young, what age is too old. I feel like people either start puppies too early or write off older dogs completely. Um, and I guess like what I'll say off the bat with this is, every breed is different on recommendation. So always talk to your vet first. If you have a puppy, talk to your vet about like when they think is an appropriate time for you to start taking your dogs on hikes. One from a vaccination perspective, because some if you there are some guidelines with that your vet might recommend. And also just different size breeds can do like shouldn't go certain amount of miles until they're a certain age. And I don't know all those rules. I know that I waited with Oliver like a whole year before we started doing more than 2 or 3 miles. And he's just now we're doing about 6 together, but even at 6, like I'm still waiting till he's maybe about 2 to go beyond that. But that's the first thing that I'll say on that. Kelly, do you have anything to add to that, having worked with vets and stuff?
Yeah. I definitely am like pro vaccination with my pets, pro like heartworm and flea and tick preventative. So that's one thing that you should be considering when you're hiking with a pet is the increased vet costs, if you're taking these extra precautions. So for me, my dog gets all of her annual vaccines. I pay extra for the Lyme vaccine. We get like a heartworm injection, so I don't have to forget about any supplements. So,
Yeah, and Kelly lives
um,
in a like higher density of tick
very ticky.
Lyme
Yes.
disease area, which is
I
also good to know. Like, where do you live?
mhm.
How much more common is it? Because I do take a little bit different approach with my tick and flea prevention, but I do have my own version. It's just not quite as aggressive. But I don't live in an area that is as bad for that.
Yeah, I remember there was one backpacking trip. It was before I had Maple, and it was just me and Zion, and he had like a best friend that was herding breed, long hair, named Arugula. And we were driving to like get something to eat after the trip. And I see my friends in the back seat, their hands just keep flying out the car window. And when we get to the place, I'm like, hey, what was that? Why were y'all throwing, like, what were you throwing out each side of the car? And they were like ticks. Rue was
Yeah.
covered in like 30 ticks. But she was also an off-leash dog, which we will talk about that later too.
Well, also, this is before I forget, because I wrote a note, because I didn't write this anywhere else, but I just wanted to mention I also got this thing called a tick mitt. Have you
Mm-hmm.
heard of them? They're great.
Yes.
I always rub down Ollie with a tick mitt, and it just is like this microfiber mitt towel thing that like gets ticks off a little bit easier. I always rub them down after a hike. That
Yes.
helps because they can be really small. They can be very,
Yes. Yeah, they can be tiny. Nymphs are like the size of pinpricks, and nymphs are the little babies. So
yeah.
you're not just looking for big ticks, you're also up against these itty bitty tiny ticks. And my dog is black with a white face. So my other dog was all white. He was super easy to find stuff on. But my other dog, even though she's short hair, is completely black. So but as far as age, like these, it's the same thing where you are starting slow and being very observant about how your dog is handling different mileage, different temperatures, different terrain, how they're interacting. I had one dog that loved water, so I had to take extra precautions with him, make sure his ears are dry when I get him out of the water. And my other dog doesn't want to be near the water. So,
Yeah.
the personalities come into play as much as age and breed.
Yeah, and there was a time like I remember with Lincoln when he got older, we took him on a backpacking trip. Maybe he was like 11 or 12. He was probably 12 or 13 because I think like he went pretty strong until about 12 or 13. But we did a backpacking trip with him. It was only a few miles. It had quite a bit of gain, but he came back from that trip very like sore and like a bit hurt. And I was like, "Oh, I think I think Lincoln's reaching the age where he can't do this kind of thing anymore." And so you also just need to be observant and like mindful of your senior dogs. Like
Yes.
they're
Yeah,
gonna
that's
just
hard to
keep
like
going.
gauge
Yeah.
with senior dogs. You're like, are they slowing down because they're tired? Are they slowing down because they have pain?
Yeah.
Are they slowing down because they just want to like sniff? Because sometimes we forget that they, get old. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I had the same instance. It was before Zion died. I had both dogs. I took them on like a 7-mile training hike at a local state park, and it was going fine, and it was a hot day too. Gosh, it was so hot. And so it was going fine until about mile 6. We were almost done, and I was just trying to get my smaller dog Maple down into the water because we were by a lake, and it was like a quarter of a mile, and I almost had to carry her because she was just like so exhausted by that point. And we had done hikes up until like we had done hikes that length, and with the heat, with the long day, like that was a big first indicator like, oh, my dogs are aging.
Yeah.
So I got her safely to the water, and she was totally fine. But um, you have to pay attention to those moments, because I could have just, if I wasn't paying attention or being empathetic, I could be like, oh, come on, you're being so lazy. Let's go. It's just another mile. But
Right. Yeah.
treat your dogs like a 2 or a 3-year-old. I read this year that like dogs have the capacity, like the mental capacity of toddlers. And then, being around a toddler in a stepmom era, it puts things really into perspective. So think of your dog as like reasoning with a toddler.
Yeah. I agree. And kind of like the last thing I'll say on this is if you do have a puppy, think about training them, not just about like think don't just think about like, oh, when can they do the miles? Start thinking early about this is something I learned. I never did this with Lincoln and he had leash aggression. But if you get a puppy and you get to train them from when they're young, like take advantage of it. There's a lot of good behaviors and training that can make them very confident in the outdoor spaces that is going to be really useful. So we did a lot of training with Oliver, walking on different textures, different terrains. Every time I see a boulder outside, I have him jump up on it. We jump on things, we jump on logs. He gets treats for it. He did puppy classes for a year, and they had this class called Pup Lotties where they would teach them to get their paws onto like objects that were like those blow up balls and like discs. So they would move around and they get used and comfortable to like being on moving surfaces, and just build confidence with that. And then socializing with other puppies. Like I did a lot of that work with Ollie in his first year. So we didn't really get to do a lot of miles, but we like went out and if there was a loud noise, I'd say yes and give him a treat. And so we got like very comfortable with loud noises and people and animals. We have like deer out here, so like anytime we see a deer, he gets a reward. So there's a lot of really good things you can do with your puppy when they're young to give them confidence and bravery for setting them up for success in the outdoors. And like Kelly was mentioning with the gear, like you can even set your gear out and like have them be like see it before they ever, get outside and step on your sleeping pad and hear it crunch and like not be scared of those things. Like there's a lot of confidence building that you can do.
And you can do it with dogs at any age. It
At
might
any
just take a
yes, at
little,
any
yeah,
age. Yeah.
it might take a little longer, even if they're a puppy. It's all based on like, personality
That's a
and
good
a
point. I didn't
million
mean
things.
just puppies, but yeah, it is helpful to do that in the beginning of the
And
puppy.
those things like transpire into all kinds of different things, right? Like if you wanted to take your dog paddle boarding or on a boat or kayaking, or you need to fly with them so you can go on an
Yes.
adventure, like the
Yeah.
training is never ending.
Yeah,
So,
like Italian Greyhounds tend to be like very skittish and nervous dogs. So like we worked on the loud noises a lot. But now he can like walk down. He used to be so scared of the garbage truck, but like he would just always get treats when the garbage truck came. So now he's like very fearless of it. So
yeah, Maple used to like turn into a boulder when she would see other dogs. Like she's kind of a quiet, reactive dog. She
mm,
just stands, gets really rigid and stares, and then given an opportunity, she will charge, which is like awful. 'Cause she's like a bear. She like shows no emotion until she's like ready to go. So apparently that's very normal for that breed, but
mm.
yeah, you can, and now it's like she can actually walk by a dog in close quarters and not react. And people always talk about how great she is. And I was like, well, she was
You're
quite the
like that take
handful.
took a
Yeah,
lot of
that we
work.
both worked on our anxiety a lot
Yes.
together. So I want to switch gears, Allison, and talk about gear because we get questions all the time on what specific gear do I need for my dog. And the good news is you don't need a ton of technical gear for your dog. So what are you taking out when you go backpacking or hiking with a dog, Allison?
Well, it depends on obviously day hiking versus backpacking, but I think there are like definitely some basics. We got, you always want water for your dog. If you're backpacking, you want to think about making sure you can filter their water as well as yours. We can talk about that a little bit more in a second. Food. This is like, so for my day hikes with Oliver, we're not doing anything more than 6 miles. I'm bringing training treats. So we just do real meat training treats, and that has been enough for us. But if with backpacking, this is something I've been thinking about a lot. I don't quite know what I want to feed him backpacking because I home cook for Oliver, and that's just not gonna like be possible to bring that food. It will like go bad what I currently have for him. So I'm gonna have to start testing out some like dried options or canned options just to make sure his stomach doesn't get upset because he kind of has a weird stomach. So this is just something I want to put emphasis on with backpacking with your dog. You may have to bring different food. If you don't, great, but test it out beforehand to make sure that they like it and they tolerate it. Because my other dog, he did not like his dried food. He used to eat dried food. He did not like it when we were backpacking, and I wanted to make sure he was getting enough food. And so I had to bring special things for him
Same.
to like eat it. Yeah. So I was like, I need you to eat calories because we're having big days. And for some reason, you're not eating this. And so we had to make it special. So you need to test that out before you go on a multi-night trip. Um, Poop bags, we'll talk a bit more about pet waste in a second because I know it's a big question, but a way to carry your dogs out. So like a special sling, especially if you have a big dog. Leash harness, maybe booties. We can talk about that in a second more. And then weather dependent gear like rain gear or sweaters. Like for me, that's particularly important with an Italian Greyhound with zero body fat. So like Ollie always has sweaters and he has rain gear and stuff like that. Do you have anything to add to that, Kelly, that I didn't mention?
You also want to think through their sleep system. You don't just want to like toss your dog in your tent
Yes.
and expect
Especially
them to,
for backpacking, yeah.
and expect them to sleep on the cold ground. Because
What do
when
you do with
we
your dog?
Well, I would just pack essentially like an extra setup for them. They're big and they didn't like getting into a sleeping bag, but I would bring a sleeping bag for them to share as essentially like a blanket that I threw on top of a foam pad.
Yeah.
And so I have pretty big dogs. And when I'm in my hammock, they actually just have that set up underneath my hammock and they are tethered to the same trees. So my one dog actually really liked that open concept. And then for my dog that was, that one that was a nervous, intense, I had like a cable that I would bring like it's kind of heavier because it has to be big enough for my 120-pound dog.
Yeah.
And I would run it into my tent, and then the dogs would sleep in their harnesses so that if either of them were having a hard time, I could clip them and they could have some time out of the tent and then come back
Mm.
in, or I could like leave the door open and it made them a little bit more comfortable. So I think the sleep system is one that gets overlooked. If it's a small dog, they can easily climb in your sleeping bag with you. Like I see all your videos of Lincoln being in your sleeping
Well, okay,
bag.
that's like an interesting thing for me too, because Lincoln was a curl into a snail size like roll, and he would get in the crook of my like the side of my I would sleep on my side and he'd just be curled up in a ball next to me inside my sleeping bag on my sleeping pad. So it'd be perfectly fine. All of her sleeps stretched out. He pushes his legs out, and so he's like he wants maximum space. So I'm probably gonna I this is something I have to test with him on our very first trip. But I think I'm gonna have to get a wide sleeping pad,
Hmm.
a wider one than normal, like extra wide, and then probably a bit extra wide of a sleeping bag to
Hmm.
accommodate Oliver's particular. But he has like no body fat, so I don't want him to sleep on his own still.
Yeah.
I want him to be able to get my heat at night, and so he doesn't freeze to death. So these are things you need to think about with your dog for
Yes.
sure, because every dog's so different.
Yeah, and we were talking about treating water too, and this is one because people are like, "Oh, I'm gonna let my dog drink out of the stream or the water sources
Hmm.
there," and I totally do that too. Like, that's one of the reasons that I pay like $400 annually at my vet visits to get my dog to have like parasitic treatments, to have vaccines. But of course, there's nothing that's like out there for Giardia, and there's certainly not anything for blue-green algae, which can is toxic for anybody. So. You always want to be careful about the
Where they
water.
drink.
Yes, where they're drinking. If you're letting them drink from wild sources, you need to be checking them first. Like, this is another reason that we'll talk about later, about considerations on leash versus off leash. And so, when you can, you want to offer your dog treated water that you have filtered, which you can either filter to the filter you brought. You can take iodine tablets, but the dog may not want to drink iodine water. But they might, who knows? But it's something to consider. Like, your dog doesn't have some stomach of steel. They're not immune to some of the different bacteria and viruses that flow through water. So, and then,
This goes like really into your pre-trip planning too, like knowing what sources of water you
yes.
might come across that particularly with blue-green algae, like for yourself as well. Like you should
Hmm.
not be drinking in water sources that have been identified to have blue-green algae. So in your research ahead of time, that's something you should have probably identified, and you should be familiar with what this looks like as well, just in
Yes.
case. And then like the other thing I was going to mention before I forget is I have backpacked in areas with what geothermal activity.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to also be careful around places like that and knowing where the safe water is to drink because I'm not remembering off the top of my head like what that particular compound is, but there's sometimes that could be something you don't want to drink out of yourself or your dog to be drinking out of.
And like more popular water too. Like if you're going to like a state park where everybody's swimming in this lake, like the more activity in a water, the higher risk there is for contamination. So, and that's for people and dogs and wildlife. So,
I personally just try to treat all of Ollie's water. He is a little bit, my other dog never drank water. Ollie will sometimes. So I have to watch him as well from drinking
Yeah.
from sources. So I don't
And
know.
make sure you're bringing a water dish for your dog so that it's
Yeah.
not like struggling to drink from a bottle that you're pouring. Like I have seen people bring this was like a friend of a friend on a trip brought a dog and I think it was like an Italian Greyhound. It was like some very tiny dog or it was some terrier and I remember leaving my dog home on that trip because I was already like helping a new friend kind of get oriented into backpacking and so I was like, I'm going to leave my dog at home this time. And this friend of a friend brought their dog and had nothing planned for them. Like, forgot to bring him food. So, me and my
Mm,
friend were like feeding this dog our food scraps. Didn't bring a water dish. So, he was like trying to make a dish on the ground with like a plastic baggie. And I didn't have, none of us had our dog stuff to help this poor dog.
yep.
So, the dog had a really hard time, and it just kind of seemed like the owner forgot that they brought the dog, and
Yeah,
it
that's
it
weird.
turned it was really upsetting. So
I'm
it
like, I
turned
obsess when I bring my dog. I'm like, do I have all of his sweaters?
yes,
Do I have his
exactly.
like
You sh everybody
do I have
should
his
be
special water bottle with the little flip top that becomes a bowl?
yeah,
Like
that's your like I said, dogs are toddlers. You
you
have
should
to
have your own
pack for
packing
them.
list for your dog if you're going to start hiking and
Yes.
backpacking with them. Like I have a little bag by the door that has everything he needs for our hikes because we hike quite often, but like
Honestly, we
backpacking,
just
he has his own list.
you and I just need to make one of these
That's true. Yeah,
for
we
our
should do
students.
that.
We should just make one for our students and be like,
Yeah.
here's this training you can go to. So you mentioned boots. This is one that, some people go back and forth on. But it might just be like,
I
again,
think it's a
everything is
simple
case
answer.
by case.
Yeah.
Like if your
Yeah, like
dog, maybe if
depends.
it's like high mileage, you do want to
Or
protect their
terrain type
pads.
sometimes,
Yes.
or temperature. Like for
Um,
me with Oliver, it's usually I'm thinking booties for temperature, too cold or too hot.
yeah.
So I use these like balloon booties. They look like balloons. I forget what
Yes.
they're called, like dog paws. He just hates any other boot. This is the only one that has really worked well for him. And if it's icy out or if it's super hot and for some reason we can't avoid it with him walking, I put those on. But otherwise,
Yeah.
he prefers not to have them.
Yeah. And it's, you want to be checking your pet's paws too, like again, for higher mileage, their paws may not be used to all of that. And
Yeah.
so that was another thing we'll get into the on and off leash. Like that can damage your pet's paws if they're just running around, not understanding mileage. So,
Also, this is a thing to test beforehand. Do not bring
yes.
boots being like, oh, we need booties for this like desert sandy hike that we're doing with our dog, and never having test booties before because they are the weirdest thing for dogs to get used to wearing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they can trip over them too. Like it can be not just that they just hate them, but my big clumsy dog, I would try boots on him in like hot weather and icy weather. And he would drag his feet. So he would literally trip on the boots and then fall on his face. He was so clumsy.
Yeah,
So
it's
boots were more of a hazard for us.
yeah, they take training. They take time to get used to.
Yeah, we do also get asked about packs all the time. And again, you're probably going to be sick of hearing us say it depends, but this is why like having those judgment skills and like research skills is like a defining skill as an outdoor enthusiast because I have big dogs and so it makes sense for them to be able to carry their stuff and
Yeah.
they're carrying the light stuff, right? Like they might be carrying their food, their poop bags, um and like maybe a foam pad. And again, this is something that you have to warm your dog up to. One of my dogs absolutely hated wearing a pack. He was like, if it wasn't perfectly weighted so that it wasn't going to one side or another, because that happens a lot with dog packs. If it was tipping to one side, you would have think that somebody was just like poking him the whole time and like jabbing his side because he would get really irritated that that
Yeah.
was happening. So you want to make sure that if you're doing a pack that you are training your pet with it on like
Well, and
walks
making
around the
sure
neighborhood.
also like making sure there's no pinch points or rub points like
Yes.
before you're out on a multi-night trip and you've committed to it because I have had dogs be very particular with certain harnesses like where they create like
Yep.
rubbing in the wrong way. So packs could be the same way. we personally, Italian Greyhounds are not built to carry packs. So I carry all of their stuff. Michael and I have joked about getting him the tiniest little backpack, but only for like hilarious factor, like for us to laugh.
He
Like
just has your little
not for
cheese grater.
practicality, not at all. Yeah, like just carrying one of his poop baggies or something like. So yeah, it like Kelly said, it just depends.
Yeah, and then as a big dog owner, one of the major things that I might carry is some type of carrier for a big dog. And now these you can buy these commercially where it's just like a sling that you slip under your dog and you can carry them out or like backpack them out. Um, and I will say if you take like wilderness first responder, which is a human wilderness medicine training, you learn how to improvise medical gear out of your outdoor gear. So like slings out of jackets. And you can essentially do the same thing with your dog in a pinch. So when you're taking these types of trainings, it's good to think through the type of med rescue your pet might need as well. So,
Which we'll talk about a little bit more in a bit, like the med
yeah.
kit. But I do think with a big dog, like correct me if I'm wrong, because you have big dogs, but I just think it would be easier to pre-pack like a sling for a big trip. Because
Yeah.
if you were having to carry a big dog out on like tied together jackets, like or something like that, improvise, that would be quite hard. But with a small dog, that's quite easy. It's like literally a little sling they fit into your
Yeah.
jacket. So, yeah. Yeah, I
So
agree.
there's lots of options. So definitely like carry your safety gear and then get training as well to help you in times where you either don't have access to it or um, you're just able to do that for anybody. Like let's say you had multiple dogs that need help. So
Yeah.
yeah,
All right.
definitely.
Well, let's switch gears into training and prep. So we talked about at the beginning, I said go slow to go fast. Maybe let's talk through what does starting small actually look like? If you were coaching a client on go slow to go fast with their dog in particular in mind, backpacking with them. Let's say one of our clients said, I want to take my dog backpacking. He's never been before. What would your advice be for them, Kelly?
So start with empathy. Would you throw yourself into something that you didn't completely understand? Like if you didn't know how you felt on a 12-mile hike or a friend, are you going to throw you and yourself in or you and a friend in on something like that? No, your
Yeah.
dog is also a friend. So starting slow with
And they
things
trust
like,
you
yes, they trust you. And
and they want to please you.
don't make it a terrible experience because the harder that it is for them, the worse it's going to be for training because there's going to be negative association if they're like struggling or scared or being scolded a bunch. You know, like if my reactive dog, I didn't take her to campgrounds for a long time because there's a lot going on at a car campground. There's other dogs, there's kids everywhere. And my dog was just going to be stressed out the whole time. And that was going to stress me out the whole time.
Yeah.
So,
Wait, can I tell a quick story before you jump into the go slow to go fast? Because you
yeah.
made me think of something. Oliver, when he was a puppy, we took him on this hike and he was being brave and he jumped on this really big rock. And then he like had this moment where he realized he was on a really big rock and he got very scared and crouched all the way down and started whimpering. And like we brought him down and we were like, "Oh, buddy, you were very brave and then you got very scared." And now he's very good at jumping on rocks, but this same boulder, this one boulder that we pass all the time because I do that hike all the time, he will not go near it. He has like trauma associated with just that one particular boulder and it's not any different than the other ones he jumps on. So that's real. Like creating a positive experience in the beginning is like your dog will start to associate things, negatively, positively, you know, from experiences. So, anyways, that was a little,
It totally sounds like it could be replaced with a toddler too. You
yeah.
know, like somebody's kid did
They're like,
something out
that
of
rock.
excitement and then was like, "Oh no," and
Oh
then doesn't
no,
want to
this
do
was a
it anymore.
mistake.
Yeah, so just take your pet, start with daily walks in your neighborhood. You know, like I do 1 mile a day with my dog in the park, and actually, some of the some of the best advice I got from my one-on-one dog trainer about reactivity and anxiety in dogs is to do the same walk or hike over and over again. Because to me, I was like, well, I don't want to see the same stuff over again. I was mixing it up for my
Mm.
dogs, and she was like, you're stressing them out. And
They do like
seasonally,
predictability.
exactly. And seasonally, like if you live in a place with seasons and you walk less when it's like cold and icy out, or even right now, a lot of us are in like heat advisories, your dog, their tolerance for those stresses may go down when they get out less. And so this trainer was telling me, after winter, when spring rolls around and her dogs barely get walks, she basically has to kind of revert back to some of her heftier training with her more reactive dogs, or she'll make the walk shorter. So she'll like walk to the end of her street and back instead of doing like a whole walk to the park.
Yes.
So you can, if your dog is stressed out, like even when you start small, if you're still seeing some stress, back it up even a little more and make things really predictable and comfortable for your pet, because we talk about this all the time about the unknown being what's super scary. And that's true for all
Your
kinds of
animals as
animals
well.
and
Yeah.
humans. So you can do short hikes into
And
longer
they're
hikes.
learning to build that trust with you as well. Like if they feel like
Yes.
they can trust you, that grows as well through these like short
Yeah.
bits.
And don't like, don't throw yourself into situations that you're not comfortable with either, because if you're stressed out, your dog's going to pick up on you being stressed out too. So, camp in your backyard, camp inside your house, do car camping trips, go on road trips. Like if you're I remember my first road trip, like day road trip with my first dog. He had never been in a car for 3 hours. He literally got motion sickness and threw up in my car. So
Yeah.
that's like another consideration, is how does your dog travel? And you're planning your road trips to stop extra to let them out. So then from there, you can get into short backpacking trips, different terrains. Like you're going to have all this information on how you and your pets do on these trips, especially, together. So,
Yeah, I've been like, over the last year, short hikes, starting to get into longer hikes, started to do a lot of van camping trips with Oliver. And at first, he hated van camping trips. Now he loves it. And so now that we're thinking about his first backpacking trip, like the first one that I'm thinking about doing with him will literally probably not be more than a few miles to a place and one overnight. Like I just want to see how he does one overnight. We'll probably do a car camping in a tent trip before that just to get our gear situated and make sure it feels great. But yeah, those are such great tips, I think.
yeah, actually, and one of the benefits of having big dogs is when you're going uphill, they can help you they'll help pull you uphill. So, that's
Well,
a
one of the benefits of going having a sight hound, Kelly, is when you want to go downhill, they will literally pull you downhill.
we did talk about like getting them warmed up to a tent
Yeah.
before we do that. So I don't know if we
Okay.
want to talk
We
any
don't need
more
to talk
about
about
that. I think this next one's a good one because it's going to be a good segue into our safety and etiquette section. So we're going to talk a little bit about off-leash recall. So is a solid off-leash recall actually achievable, or should everyone just assume leash only? What's your take, Allison?
Well, I think a solid off-leash recall is achievable, yes, because trainers do it all the time with their dogs when they're really vigilant about off-leash like recall. So that I want to say that up front. But when it comes to like hiking and backpacking, I also don't want to be here to tell people what to do because you have free will and you get to make your choice. But I personally am in the camp where in most backcountry areas, particularly when you're around a ton of wildlife situations, I think dogs should be leashed at all times, even if they have really good recall, unless they're just like by your side, like connected to you and have excellent recall, which I have seen dogs like that they're just like by their owner the whole time. They have excellent like hardcore training, you can tell. But for me, like it's more of there's so many like different reasons why, but it's a wildlife safety issue, it's an ecology issue, it's like a all there's so many things and we're going to touch about like different aspects of it more. But off the cuff, like I think dogs should be on leash. What's your take? I don't know, Kelly, if you have a
I'm team
different
on leash for sure. For sure. I'm on team leash for all the reasons you mentioned, the top being safety and the second being respecting nature. Because there's a lot that dogs don't understand. Like I said, they're not wildlife. They do not understand wildlife. They
Yeah.
do not understand noxious plants. They don't understand ticks. They don't understand cliffs. Like there's a lot of things your dog can accidentally run into or run off of when they're off leash.
Or
And
eat
yes.
or
And it's super fun.
food.
Like, don't get me wrong, it's so fun to watch your dog play. But in a protected natural space, like that's maybe not the place, you
Yeah.
know?
And we've had Kim on the podcast before, and Kim, she's a wildlife safety expert. She talks about this all the time when she's at our events or when she was on the podcast. But one of the leading causes of, bear attacks or wildlife attacks is from off-leash dogs. So what happens is like dogs running off leash run into an animal, then they're like, "Oh shit, I'm gonna go back to mom now." Like that's kind of scary. And then they're running from the animal, which kicks a animal's prey drive in. And you might end up having a bad encounter with a bear because now they're angry and they're like charging at you. And this has been one of the top reasons people get into like unwanted animal encounters.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
true. And there, like, I think there was a video that just went viral recently of a guy who was mountain biking with his dog,
Yeah.
and his dog was very well trained. It was running right next to him until the dog saw a bear, and the dog chased the bear, and the bear ran up to the guy and almost ran into him while he's going super fast on a mountain bike. And so, like, I'm not trying to tell anyone what to do, but I don't personally, you can't give your dog the attention they need when you're also on a mountain bike.
Yeah.
Like, so in the same regard, like when you are hiking, you should know where your dog is, you should know what they're doing. In my opinion, an off-leash dog needs to be within 6 feet of you and
Yeah.
on the trail. Like our leave no trace tells us to stay on the trail so we're not trampling plants. The same is true for pets. They need to stay on trail. Otherwise, they're dragging poison ivy back to you, they're dragging ticks back to you, they're dragging wildlife back to you. It's also, in my opinion, quite disrespectful to let a dog run around and bark at wildlife and chase birds and chase squirrels. Like, we are the guests in these protected spaces. And when there's this thing called carrying capacity in ecology, where it basically says all these resources in this one area can support X amount in a population. So dogs are way above the carrying capacity for wild spaces because we're bringing out tons of them. Like, think of every hiker bringing their dog out. This is one of the reasons we can't just leave poop out there, right? So now we have all these dogs that are running after wildlife, and eventually the wildlife are going to learn that's not a safe place for them because there's all these crazy predators, even if they're not killing anything or catching anything, they're still highly disturbing the wildlife. So
Yeah.
I think that's one that people really don't think about. And I think about it a lot because I used to be a parks manager that ran um, a working farm that was like an educational farm where we had gardens and fields and livestock, lots of animals that people could come up and pet. And we had signs everywhere that said, "Do not let your dogs near the animals, it stresses them out." And people would see me walking around in a uniform and still letting their off-leash dog go crazy and like bark at our chickens. And I would be like, "Please don't do that. It really stresses our livestock out." And they would just like think it was funny and like fun for their dog. And
Yeah.
so, um,
I feel like people let their dog, I feel like the majority of people, again, not trying to blanket statement everything because obviously there are people with like solid off-leash dog behaviors, but this is not the majority of people that I run into. I think a lot of people are lazy with wanting to do training properly, and they're like, my dog pulls when I'm on leash and it's annoying, and so I let them off leash. And then they feel more comfortable. And for me, and then they don't have solid recall. And Kelly, you probably feel the same way too, because we both have had Ollie isn't like this, but Lincoln was reactive dogs. And, it is so scary when an off-leash dog runs up to your dog,
Hmm.
even with Ollie, because I have Ollie on leash. If an off-leash dog runs up to Ollie and they're like, oh, he's friendly, and I'm like, well, I don't know your dog. Like I'm here to protect my dog from,
Hmm.
danger, and he trusts me. And right now, Oliver has like full trust in me. He's not had a bad experience with another dog.
Yeah.
And that's scary. So,
I
yeah.
think the best that I ever heard somebody put it, they were talking about like reactive dogs because I
Yeah.
started following a ton of reactive dog pages. And they painted this scenario to give people empathy about how it feels to be a leashed dog with a dog running at you.
Yeah.
Imagine you are in an airplane, the doors have closed for boarding. You're like in the air, you're strapped in, and then somebody in the front stands up abruptly, makes eye contact with you, and runs at full speed while keeping eye contact with you. You're not going to be like, oh, that maybe they're friendly. You're going to be like trying to get out of your seat. You're going to be preparing to defend yourself because of
E-
whatever is about to happen.
Even us on the trail, if somebody just like made eye contact with
Started
us and
running
started
at
full
me.
sprinting at me,
I
I'd
would
be like,
be,
oh God.
Nicole Snell's self-defense skills would be
I'd
kicking
be
in.
like,
I'd be ready to
stop.
fight.
I don't
Yeah.
want any trouble.
Back up. Yeah.
Back
So
up.
So I think that people mean well. They want their dog to have fun. Another off-leash thing, like I mentioned earlier, is dogs don't understand how much we're moving. They
Yeah.
don't understand daily mileage. So what ends up happening is the dog is
They
running
do way
back and
more
forth
miles.
and doubling their mileage. So now they're exhausted on day one, and their paw pads are getting torn up.
Yeah.
So I just think that there's a lot to consider about off-leash.
I think if you want
And
your dog off leash, you should do the work to make it very solid and like
yes.
obeying you and knowing the rules and like staying within a perimeter of you. Like that's my only like thing. And if
And
it's
like it's
otherwise,
an
it's
etiquette thing too. Like,
oh my gosh,
not every
Kelly.
dog is friendly,
When when
respect.
Ashma and I were hiking the West Highland Way, there was this woman we runned into, and she kept yelling, "Tilly, tea time! Tilly, tea time!" And we ran into her and we were like, "What's Tilly and tea time?" And she was like, "Oh, I'm walking my daughter's dog, and the only way she'll come back to me is if I yell tea time." And then all
Oh.
of a sudden, this like spaniel just like charges out of the woods and it like sees the grandma, and then she's like, tea time, Tilly. And then it just sprints off into the other direction. And I was like, oh my gosh, this dog is so chaotic.
And
Like,
that
what
goes
is
back into
going
breeds
on?
too. Like, imagine you have a terrier and you don't know that your dog is down in a hole somewhere because it
Yes.
chased a rodent. Like,
Oh my goodness.
it can be very
Ollie
scary.
will throw himself off of a cliff to go after a squirrel. Like he has
Maple is so
reckless in it.
clumsy. She would fall off of one on accident just trying to look over it. And
Mhm.
I do want to mention, because you brought up Scotland, is that off-leash dogs are like the culture of it is different in
It
different
is.
countries. And
Yeah.
so like I was just in Germany and the dogs are all off leash in like the parks, but the training and the culture around off leash dogs is completely different. Like these dogs were not running up to other dogs, they were right next to their owners. I even I even watched some lady in a small Baltic Sea town like walking her ponies, and none of like all the dogs were unfazed. They just like passed
Well,
right by them.
I don't know if Scotland is that hardcore. They were all off leash, but they were all chaotic that I saw. So,
Yeah, so I do want to mention, because we have listeners and students everywhere, that like
yeah.
your off-leash stuff may be very different, and that's another reason
Know your area,
leash.
know your
Yeah.
regulations.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because we did have questions about like, some people are like, well, how do I even backpack with dogs if I can't do that in national parks? Because a lot
Yeah.
of them don't allow dogs in the backcountry. And so that's just another like research skill of
Trip planning,
always,
research skill. Yeah.
yes, keeping those locked. But yes, at the end of the day, we definitely are team on leash unless you want to do the intense training that we both
That
feel like it
obviously isn't
takes.
always a popular opinion, but we have our reasons. So,
Yeah. And so, Allison, you've got a pretty small dog. Like if somebody runs up on my dog off leash, I have multiple handles on my dog.
yeah.
So, I have two handles on the leash and one handle on her harness. So
Yeah.
I get basically in between her and the dog, or I get her in between my legs and I'm bracing so that she can't pull or snap at other dogs.
Yeah.
What are you doing when a loose dog runs up to you and your small dog?
If it's a loose dog, I pick him up because my dog's little enough that that's what I do. Like I just want Ollie to fully trust me and not have a bad experience. So I pick him up and hold him and like we figure it out from there depending on the dog that's coming up to me. But something I have recommended to my friends with big dogs that obviously you can't do that. Like you said, if a dog's running up to you and you have to brace, especially if you have a aggressive dog or a scared dog, there is this pet corrector stuff that you can get. It just blows air. You can keep that with you, and if you can just spray the air, it's like a loud noise and it sprays air. So it's not like a pepper spray or anything that harms them. That can be very helpful in those situations because it's not harming the dog. Maybe the owner's like it's friendly, but you're like, mine's not. You can
Hmm.
pet correct and then hopefully figure out the situation with the other owner
Yeah.
before it becomes a thing. But yeah, like with my small dogs, I pick them up. I
Yeah.
try to avoid the encounter altogether. But that puts me at risk sometimes too, because if I were in a situation with a not friendly dog, which thankfully I haven't, um, I could get hurt,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, some dogs get even more reactive when a pet gets picked up. Like it might start jumping on you. And a last resort, if you're hiking and you've got like water bottles, is water. Like if you didn't have a pet corrector,
Yeah.
dumping water on an aggressive dog, I've been told by trainers, is a quick snap out of it because they're like, oh my God, something that breaks that hyperfixation that they have because a lot of these dogs get into like just tunnel vision when they're reactive. It's not even necessarily that they're aggressive. Like we learned about my reactive dog, she was reacting out of anxiety, not
Yeah.
aggression. So,
Yeah.
so those are a couple things you can
I
use.
think also something I'll add too is like, in Colorado, like there's different rules in different areas. So sometimes we do run into off-leash dogs. I'm always just really aware when I'm walking Ollie. So sometimes I'll see an off-leash dog way off in the distance and I stop hiking. And a lot of times
Mm.
that indicates to the other owner that I'm not comfortable with their dog being off leash and coming towards my dog. And they will usually put their dog on leash while we pass each other.
Yeah.
And that has happened a lot. Like I'll just give the indication like, "Hey, cool, I'm not cool with this. My dog is on leash." And people will like at least where I am have often put their dog on leash quickly
Yes.
before it becomes an encounter. So that's
Yeah, and I remember I used to be so angry. I mean, even if the dog didn't run up to me, it would just like make me so irate on the inside. And I was like, ugh, I just don't want to feel this way. Like I can't make everyone leash their dog. I don't want to
yeah.
feel this way forever. And so I had to like have a shift with that, and it came from communicating. I'll just be
Yeah.
like, hey, my dog is a little bit anxious around other dogs. Would you mind putting your pet on leash while we pass? Or body language where you're stepping off. And so don't
Yeah.
assume everybody has the same understanding or beliefs even. Just like
I have
communicate
found most
lightheartedly.
people are like pretty open to it. Like,
Chill. Dog
especially
owners
over the
understand.
days, I think most people have gotten better at this, like
Yeah.
understanding, and people have gotten better at asking, which I really appreciate, instead of just
Hmm.
going up to your dog and petting or introducing. Some aren't, and I say, "Oh, hey, he's training." That's just
Yeah.
what I say. Oh, he's training. Sorry, we can't.
Yeah. And I highly recommend vests too. I got like a tactical vest for my dog that
Mm,
has
yeah.
Velcro on it, and then
Has anxiety, right? Or
I
something.
special ordered patches for her. One says nervous and the other one said not dog friendly, do not approach. And that was huge. That little piece of that visual communication.
Yeah.
Some people just assume that she's a working dog, but she's
Yeah.
not. And so having a bright orange high-vis vest that lets people know that she's anxious has changed the game about kids approaching her, about dogs approaching her. People give us more space. So if you like, don't be afraid of getting those visual cues for you and your dog too.
Yeah.
One thing that I really want to talk about is the safety aspect about people using dogs as a safety plan, Allison, because we get this all the time, especially in the solo hiker summit, where when people want to solo hike, they assume they can take out their dog and that they're going to protect them. And a lot of people do feel safer hiking alone with their pet, which is totally understandable. So we constantly, people are always like, I want to hike solo, and they're like, take a dog. Or I even had somebody do this to me at a funeral lunch where she like would not get off the topic that I was a solo hiker, no matter what I said to her. And she was like, well, at least take a dog. So what's your
Oh,
opinion on
yes.
dogs being used as the safety plan for personal protection against wildlife and strangers?
Well, I just think like I have so many thoughts on this, but people say that in our ad comments all the time. They're like, "Oh, I just especially around solo hiking, I just bring my dog," as if that is the thing that keeps them safe. I think if you bring your dog or a child, you should consider that the same level of like risk as being solo. Like you are the leader, you are the ultimate self-sufficient confident person in your group. The dog is trusting you. They are, relying on you. Like you need to treat them as part of when you're creating your trip plan and safety plan, you're considering them. I think like most dogs aren't trained for protection. Like majority of dogs are not trained for protection, and assuming that they will be this like protective thing for you is I don't understand where people get that just because they're a big dog or aggressive. Like, there's just so many things wrong with that, just like assumption about your dog. And you're putting your dog in an unsafe situation when you're coming from that perspective, I think. So, unless your dog has that specific type of training, this kind of goes back with the off leash sort of training. Like I think off leash can be done well. I think you could also train your dog to be a protective dog and it understand and have really good command with you on when to do that and when not to do that. That's like very important. So if you wanted your dog to do that, do extensive training with that dog. But
Yeah,
yeah,
and I understand from like a stranger danger perspective about how just the sight of a large dog may like scare off
yeah,
somebody, but that goes back to what our self-defense partner teaches about like those people picking easy targets. It may not necessarily be the dog actually protecting you in a situation. And like you mentioned earlier, the data shows us in wildlife attacks that dogs actually increase those attacks and bring wildlife back to the human because the dog is looking for the human to protect it because that's all it's ever known is the human providing and protecting. So, yes, I used to work in dog daycare. I knew a person who put their dog through defense training. It was
yeah.
very rigorous. And
It's very
actually,
rigorous.
her dog breed was the first in the area of his breed to even get that certification. And he was like a quite popular breed for this area.
Yeah.
So, and she was like, not a lot of people are in that class. It's very expensive to get a dog into training like that. And then they
And
have
it
like
takes a lot of work. Like
code
any
words.
training
Yeah.
takes so much work. It's just dedication. But like that's
So
important if you're gonna assume that from your dog.
for me, I'm a lazy girl. I'm lazy when it doesn't matter, and I'm a hard worker where it matters. And if I had to choose between me handling all the safety precautions and learning how to handle strangers and wildlife versus training my dog, I feel the easier option is to be self-sufficient with my safety
Yeah.
skills and to be
Yeah.
the one to be in charge of that and not put my dog in that situation. I do not want my dog fighting a bear. I want to use bear spray where everybody walks away
Yeah,
unscathed.
same. Yeah. Okay, like now let's jump into overnights. I think we've touched on a lot of these things. What changes from going day hikes to overnight. We talked about the sleep system. We talked about like testing single nights before you get into multiple overnights. You will have to think about your food. You're carrying food for yourself and you're carrying food for your dog. You need to consider them in your safety and rescue plan. We kind of touched on that. And I think like one thing that I just wanted to mention extra here that I had in my notes is like if you're camping with food and trash and you gotta store your dog's food in the same way that you would for yourself, like if you're in bear area or you need to like keep it out of reach of wildlife. So that's just something to consider. Any of their smelly stuff, contain it the same way you would for your stuff.
That's a brilliant point. And for our students, when you're making your trip plans in Module 5, when you're writing out all of your details, and we have you include everybody that's in your group with a description for safety and rescue reasons, include your pets. Put
Yeah.
a description of your dog in case you and your dog get separated. And
Description, picture, yeah, all those things.
exactly, yes.
So, okay, let's jump to talking about waste logistics because I do think this is actually one of the most common questions we get. Um, what should you be doing from a leave no trace perspective? How should you be storing it? Should you cat hole it or should you pack it out?
Pack it out. So, um, you know, catholing is a last resort for dogs. A lot of people are like, well, it's just dog poop. It's just animal poop. Like it's going to rot away like the rest of the wildlife poop. But we talked about that carrying capacity earlier, where a piece of land can only sustain so much. And it's already sustaining the wildlife. The dogs are way above the carrying capacity. So the poop is not breaking down. And then you also factor in people and dogs are medicated. Wildlife is not medicated. So if your dog is on an anti-anxiety med, an anti-allergy med, one of their tick chews. There's all kinds of medication. And now we're seeing through ecological studies that there's medication runoff of all kinds, not just from pet waste, but pet waste is a big contributor. And that's affecting fish populations, right? So there's a lot to consider of these like microscopic impacts that we have. And so dog
And
poop is
even
one of
kibble
them.
like is like very different than what like wildlife
Exactly.
eats. It's like not the
And
same.
if
So leaving that out there is like,
And
yeah.
if you left that out there and it rots, now an animal is going to get botulism and get sick, right? It's just not in the normal habitat. And so we don't want to alter the health or behavior of wildlife. Otherwise, we get into positions where we have to alter our behavior as hikers and backpackers because we have now trained wildlife. Like, this is why bears and raccoons and all kinds of animals are more you're more likely to see them at a car campground in Yosemite than you are in the backcountry because they've learned all the high calorie food is
Mhm.
easily accessible. So if it's not part of that natural environment, it needs to go out. So pack out your pet poop. You need to be taking out pet bags to pick the poop up. You need to be packing a way to carry that out. So you could do like a Ziploc bag. When we carry out our human waste trash, like TP, bag that's covered in duct tape so you don't have to look at it and it's a little more durable. But there's also people they'll call it a poop Nalgene, where
Yeah.
you just get a Nalgene that is assigned for carrying dog bags of poop, like once you fill them up, so they're scent sealed so you don't have to smell it the whole hike. You can clip it to your dog's harness or backpack, or you could clip it to the back of your backpack so you don't have this like poop squishing around in your bag, and then you can throw it away with the rest of your trash. So those are the best practices, and do not leave it on the side of the
Oh my
trail and
gosh,
tell yourself
yes.
you're going to go back for it because you're not going to go
Biggest
back for
pet
it.
peeve. And
For
also
me,
people don't know either. Also like there's no sign saying I am out here. Like it's just annoying. Just don't do
it's
it.
an etiquette thing, yeah. So if my dog, I'm always happy when my dog poops like right near the trailhead because I will walk her all the way back to my car and
Yeah.
put the poop bag like near my
I'll
driver
put it on the
door.
windshield wiper.
I put it like right where I have to step to get into my car so that
Yeah.
I like will never miss it. I would definitely drive off if it was on my windshield. So
Well,
pack it out.
the official, yeah, and that's also the official leave no trace principles guidance as well to pack it out. So that's what we got
Yeah.
to say about that. So how also, let's see. I think we talked about this actually. How does knowing your own safety systems change once you got a dog fully depending on your judgment out there?
It's just
We've
leading
talked,
another
yeah,
hiking
we're leading
partner
another.
that you can't communicate with easily. It's
Okay.
taking a toddler out.
Let's go into our, I think, final section before we have closing statements. I want to talk about dog-specific first aid kit stuff because I know that's
Yes.
a question we get. So, what actually goes into a dog-specific first aid kit, or what should we be thinking about to add?
Sure. So a lot of the times you don't need to make too many adjustments to a first aid kit, especially if you just like buy a backcountry one from like
Yeah,
Knowles has them. So you want things like gauze, tape, antiseptic wipes, tweezers, bandage. Vet wraps are really nice because these, if you've ever like donated blood and they put the little piece of cotton on your arm and then they wrap it with a bandage that sticks to itself, it doesn't stick to your hair. So you can imagine that's what they use at vets to be able to avoid sticking to
pulling off your
fur.
dog's hair.
Yes.
Yeah,
Giving them bald spots. Styptic powder. This is like quick, it's like quick
clotting.
stop is what it's
Yeah.
usually called. So this is going to clot any bloods. It's typically for nails. Like I would use a general first aid practice on actually packing a wound instead of a styptic powder, but that's for like smaller cuts or like if their nail got busted. Benadryl is great for stings, bites, or allergic reactions, but remember your dog's going to get drowsy on it. So you want to ask your vet as well what the right dose is. And you could do this with anything in your first aid kit, taking it to your vet, getting their advice and any dosages. You might consider a muzzle, like a soft muzzle. I had a reactive dog. I walked her in a muzzle for 2 years. And then, I know dogs that have worn muzzles because they eat stuff all the time.
Yeah.
And
There's a
so if,
slight like difference on the or like if you have a dog that eats something, you might want to put them in a basket muzzle versus like
yes.
a restrictive muzzle. Just
Yeah,
wanted to
and
that note.
and then the muzzle, like if you might also consider a muzzle or at least like a bandana that you could do a makeshift muzzle with because some dogs get they bite when they're in fear and pain, even really sweet dogs.
Yeah, like
So,
if they're really hurt and they don't know what's going on and you're trying to help them, but they don't know and
and you're touching it,
yeah, you're
yeah.
touching it, like or even able to use a bandana to make a makeshift muzzle. But yeah,
Yeah. And then one I always say is hydrogen peroxide. Like you can actually get little packets of this, or you could pack in like a little bottle of it. And this works for humans and dogs, but you mix it 1 to 1 with water to induce vomiting. And this might be if they ate something like a poison plant or insect, or they found something rotten, or they're one of those dogs that has like a pica problem where they're eating. So hydrogen peroxide is probably like the one that I think nobody thinks about, but I think is a really, really good one to keep. And then I also think sunscreen is one that most people don't think about. I had one of my dogs has a white face and then the other one was completely white. And I had vets tell me regularly, like, you need to be considering your white dog out in the sun can actually they can get sunburned, they
sunburn.
could get cancer. Yeah, so sunscreens for dogs. Um, and
We
I
mentioned before
typically,
like something to carry them out in the slings if you
yes.
want to. Yeah.
And I typically don't apply bug spray to my dog unless it's really, really bad because I'm relying on their flea and tick stuff, which they still have to get bit for that to work. But I typically am trying to be like present with my dog, wiping stuff off of them. We have campfires here, so they can sit next to the campfire to get a bug break. So, yeah, those are the things that I would add additionally. Allison, you live in the mountains. I don't live in the mountains. What about altitude sickness with pets?
Yeah, it can happen. I've never had a dog like experience it themselves, but like I do know that they can be susceptible to it like you. So I think really you just want to like any member of your group, you want to pay attention to signs and symptoms like lethargy or appetite loss, especially if you're going at altitude, and just consider treating your dog the same way you treat yourself when adjusting to altitude, making sure they're staying really hydrated, taking your time before you're getting to altitude, especially if your dog is coming from sea level. Like we live at like around 6,000 feet. So we are already a little bit more adapted to altitude. But if we went up really high, like it's definitely something I'd be watching very considerably with him to see if he has an effect to it. Like where we hike right now, it doesn't seem to bother him. But if we went up to like 14,000 feet for whatever reason, like did a 14er, it could affect him. It definitely does me. And they can't tell you. So you have to really just like pay attention to what's normal for them.
Okay, Allison, do you have any like final thoughts on safety with the pet or just like planning for these trips, whether it's dogs getting injured, we've talked a little bit about that, or like deciding if a trip is going to be too hard for them? Like, what's your kind of final thoughts on dog safety with backpacking and hiking?
Yeah. So, I mean, I just, consider the dog part of your trip planning and safety planning from the get-go. Think about go slow to go fast. These are all principles we talked about. Go slow to go fast. Consider your dog in your trip plan, your safety plan. Help them train for it too. Like, don't just be like training yourself and then just take them out on a trip and assume that they're going to have the same fitness as you. Um, you know, think through all the things that they need and include them in your own plan as well. Yeah, I mean, really, like it can be a really fun experience, but I think everything can be solved if you just go slow to go fast. Like start slow, test things out, build it over time, see what works for your dog and what doesn't. And then yeah, be willing to turn around. Like your dog is like a member of your team and you're is looking for you to take care of them and they want to have a fun experience too and it can be really fun but at the end of the day like if they're not feeling it or they need to turn around like you need to be willing to do that for your animal. That's what I think.
Definitely.
Okay, so that is like I think we've touched on a lot. We're kind of nearing our hour 20 like limit that we were giving ourselves. Kelly, do you have I kind of gave me my rant of like what I think. There's no reason to rush, this process with your dog, especially if it's new to it. And you want to build trust and skills and tools and grow together and grow to bigger adventures over time. Because I absolutely think you can go on big adventures with your dog. Like my dog Lincoln, tiny 12-pound Italian Greyhound, went on multi-night trips with me, would do about 10 miles a day, with me on trips, and he did great. He loved it. We had a great time. And so you absolutely can build up to that. Do you have any final piece of advice for the woman who is considering going hiking or backpacking with her dog that maybe we didn't touch on, or you just want to reemphasize?
Be present to enjoy every part of it. The more that and this is another principle we teach here at She Dreams of Alpine, the more you focus on the gap and where you want to be and thinking about how much greater the future is going to be, like it's going to be harder for you to enjoy the present moment. So whether it's having a silly day inside your house where you and your dog are like eating popcorn in a tent together and having like a movie night in your living room. Now you need to make like a behind the scenes reel of you and Ollie doing that,
I
or
know, I
like
need all the
your
things.
your daily dog walks that are as just as much for the dog as they are for you. Um, just enjoy it with your dog because there were a lot of times where I felt like my frustration took the wheel on times with my dogs. And now that my reactive dog is in a place where I wanted her to be way back then,
Yeah.
it's much easier to sink into those. And I'm just like, oh, like she really was a good dog through all
Yeah.
of that. She
She's
was
just
just a
learning.
scared dog learning.
Yeah.
So like I said, imagine that your dog is a toddler, right? Like if we took a toddler on a 3 mile hike, they would start screaming. And dogs
Yeah.
don't scream unless you have a husky, then they scream. But
Yeah.
like have that empathy for your dog, even though they are an animal, they're not wildlife that inherently feels comfortable outside. So
Yeah,
enjoy it with your dog.
you made me think of something that I just wanted to mention here too, like just as we close up, because it's something I've been doing with Oliver a lot. Like I mentioned, he's a puppy. We're building up our confidence to bigger miles. And a lot of times I do have to I'm in a training period right now, and some of my days are 12-mile days, 8-mile days. I'm not quite sure Oliver is ready for that. And I could look at that and be like, oh, it sucks. I can't go on a 12-mile hike with Ollie because I don't think he's ready. But instead, what I do is I just make accommodations for myself. So what I have made is like sometimes that means I'm doing the same trails over and over. So I'll do like a 6-mile loop with Ollie, take him back home. He's perfectly happy to be in his crate and rest. And then I'll go back out and do like 4 miles, 6 miles, whatever I need to finish off for myself somewhere like closer to the house. And that's kind of our compromise lately because I just don't think he's quite ready for the big miles. And you might have to do that with your dog. Like they might not just be ready for the big things yet, and that's okay. Like at
Or
the
you
end of
may
the
be
day,
adjusting with the old dog where you
yeah,
did big
or an old
miles
dog.
and doing
Exactly.
less now.
Yeah. So anyways, I think to wrap this up, hiking and backpacking with your dog can be a really beautiful experience and it's super fun. We have both done it, and we hope that this episode gave you a little bit more confidence and things to think through about when you are considering taking your own dog and pet hiking, backpacking, camping. And of course, if you have any questions, especially if you're in the Backpacking Badass program, you can always bring them into a coaching call. We're happy to talk through things more. You can reach out to us on our DMs, but we hope you enjoyed this episode. We're going to officially close it up and call this one a wrap. All right. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, I wanted to thank you real quick for tuning into the show and listening all the way to the end. If you love this episode and you want deeper support in becoming a safe, confident, and self-sufficient hiker and backpacker, then head over to shedreamsofalpine.com/waitlist to learn more about our Backpacking Badass coaching program, where I teach you absolutely everything you need to know to be self-reliant on the trails and stop waiting around on others for the adventure invite. So I'd love to help you more in your journey of stepping into your adventurous identity, and that program is the absolute best place for us to start working together. So again, that's shedreamsofalpine.com/waitlist, and you can learn all about it there. So that's it for today, folks. I hope you get to spend some time outside this week, and I'll be back very soon with a brand new episode. Bye.